Imagine your life as a small boat floating on a huge ocean. The waves move you here and there. But the question is, who is holding the steering wheel? This is the story of a 15-year-old boy named Mark. Every morning before sunrise, while the city was still asleep, Mark pushed his small wooden boat into the cold sea. The salty wind hit his face. The waves rocked his boat. But the real struggle was not the ocean. It was inside him. In the busy city market, people only saw a quiet boy selling fish. Some thought he was weak. Some thought he was foolish. But deep in his heart, Mark carried one silent question. Is my life meant to drift like this boat, or can I change my direction? Because sometimes the biggest storm in life isn't outside. It's the fear inside us. And maybe this story is closer to your life than you think. If stories like this inspire you, subscribe to HopeTales for more powerful motivational journeys. Mark lived in a tiny wooden house by the sea. Behind the house were endless waves. In front of it stood a worn-out fishing boat tied to a wooden post. Fishing was not just Mark's job. It was his family's survival. Every morning he sailed into the gray mist of the ocean, casting his nets into the water, hoping for a good catch. But the hardest part of his day wasn't the sea. It was the market in the city. Mark had to sell the fish his family caught. But whenever customers spoke to him, his voice trembled. What is the price? How fresh are these fish? Simple questions. Yet Mark struggled to answer them. Some people noticed his hesitation, and they took advantage of it. They paid less. Some even walked away without paying. And Mark said nothing. Why? Because fear had tied his words like knots in a fishing net. His father grew more frustrated each day. Why can't you speak up for yourself? Mark lowered his eyes. But deep inside, a painful question echoed again. Am I really too weak for this world? One afternoon, Mark was alone at the market stall. His father had gone to another town to buy supplies. Suddenly, two men approached the stand. They looked confident, almost convincing. Your father sent us, one of them said. He told us to collect all the fish for the city restaurant. Mark hesitated. Something felt wrong. But doubt filled his mind. What if they were telling the truth? What if he asked too many questions? Before he could think clearly, the men had loaded all the fish into their cart. Within minutes, they disappeared into the busy streets. By evening, the stall was empty. When Mark's father returned and saw what happened, his anger exploded. You let them take everything. You're ruining this business. Those words hit Mark harder than any storm at sea. That night he walked alone to the ocean. The waves crashed loudly against the shore. Mark stared into the dark water and whispered, "Why can't I do anything right?" Was he really meant to fail? Or was there something inside him he had never discovered? As Mark sat on the cold sand, staring at the restless ocean, a quiet voice spoke behind him. Why are you looking at the sea like it stole something from you? Mark turned. An old fisherman stood there, holding a lantern. His face was weathered by years of storms. Mark told him everything. The market, the thieves, his father's anger. And finally, he asked the question that had haunted him for years. Why am I so afraid? The old fisherman listened carefully. Then he pointed toward the dark ocean. Do you see those waves? Mark nodded. Every fisherman fears them at first, the old man said. But the sea does not respect fear. It respects courage. Then he gave Mark a challenge. For the next 3 days, you must do things that scare you. 3 days? Mark asked. Yes, the old man replied calmly. Because confidence is not given to us. It is built. But the real question was Mark brave enough to try? The next morning, Mark remembered the fisherman's challenge. His first task was simple: talk to 10 strangers in the market. For Mark, it felt impossible. His heart pounded as he approached the first customer. "Good morning, the fish are fresh today." The words felt heavy, but something surprising happened. The customer smiled. "Thank you, young man." One conversation turned into two. Two turned into 5. By the end of the day, Mark had spoken to 10 people, and something inside him felt different. The next day, he helped a group of children by the harbor. He showed them how fishing nets worked. At first his voice trembled, but slowly, it grew steadier. Was his fear finally loosening its grip? On the 3rd day, Mark returned home. He stood in front of his father and said, "I made mistakes, but I want to learn." For the first time, his voice carried strength. And his father saw something new in his son: confidence. Years passed. The shy boy who once struggled to speak became one of the most successful seafood traders in the city. Mark owned several boats now. His small fishing stall had grown into a thriving business. But every morning he still walked to the same shore where everything had changed. The waves still roared. The wind still carried the scent of salt. But Mark no longer feared the ocean, because he had discovered something far more powerful: confidence. And maybe that's the real lesson of this story. Fear will always try to anchor your boat. It will whisper, "You can't do this. You will fail." But what happens if you pick up the oars anyway? What happens if you sail forward despite the storm? You may discover that the ocean was never your enemy. Your fear was. So ask yourself one question: are you drifting through life, or are you ready to steer your own boat? Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite it.